Hi, Gil from Testing Gil here, and today let's talk about charters. Specifically, we'll take a set of APIs and create a set of charters for them, as an example. This video is part of the exploratory testing video series. If you haven't watched the introductory ones, go watch it here. We use charters as a lightweight planning tool. Charters are areas we'd like to explore. We don't specify step-by-step instructions, and we don't specify exactly what we want to look at. We also don't specify how to test, which tools to use, and how to document. When we get to that point, we'll make the preparations, select the right tools, and test properly. This all comes from the mindset of exploration. We don't plan too much. Only when we get to the point, then we do the right kind of planning and go in depth. Today, we're going to explore the APIs of our Bigger Better Bookstore app. Specifically, we're going to look at this set of APIs. The APIs are Add a Book, Get a Book, Get All Books, Update a Book, and Delete a Book. It's the first time that we're testing, and that means that we're coming up with the initial list of charters. We're not starting from an existing list. If it wasn't like that, we wouldn't need to start from scratch. We might want to review the list, see if we need to make changes, see if the charters are still relevant, and maybe look at the priorities and see if we need some changes. But this is not the case today, so we are starting from a clean slate. I'll start with a couple of ideas, and then maybe dig deeper. Later on in the process, when we have this list of ideas, we can combine or separate them into sessions. Let's start with the obvious. Check every API individually. We can look at different things like status code and the responses and response time. When we were creating the charter, we can put down these things if we want or keep it open. But even working with individual APIs, we can do more. Let's look at the Get a Book API. We can probably think about different cases we might explore here. What happens if the book exists? Or maybe it doesn't. But that's not all. Let's look at the structure of the API call. What if we decide not to send the ID, like this? What happens if we send a negative number as an ID, like this? Or what happens if we send an ID like this? I can play with the data sent or the headers or everything. I can also play with who's making the call. In that case, we may have a complete charter just for input data. Okay, how about the charter for who's making the call? For example, we can call the API from different users with different permissions. Let's take a look at our Delete API. We can explore different results based on who's calling. For example, we have some kind of expectations that if an admin will call the API, the book will actually get deleted, while a regular user might not be able to actually delete the book. Or maybe we want to see what happens when the user who created the book tries to delete it versus other people who didn't create it. So we can have a whole charter just about permissions. If that charter gets to be big, we may split it into smaller charters, and one could be permissions during deleting books. Now, let's talk about real functionality, like this wasn't really functional enough. User workflows usually involve more than one API. Take, for example, the Create a Book API. Apart from all the things that we want to explore around the Create API individually, we might want to see how it works in a sequence of API calls. And the combinations are almost endless. The feature of creating a book actually involves calling the Create API, but may also involve a get to see what happens if it was actually created, and maybe a call to Get All Books API to see if it appears in that list. We may choose to see if we can update the book that we created and if we can delete it. So things like that are part of our exploration. Now, you may say that there might be an overlap between the workflows and sequences and exploring the APIs individually. And I'd say, you're right. In that case, we might want to get back to the whiteboard again and discuss what is the focus of our testing, what is more important, what is more risky, and decide where we should spend our time exploring. Okay, we've covered some things. But what about parallel execution? What happens when multiple calls to the same API try to create the same book? What happens when millions of callers try to get the details of the same book? And what happens when a call to update the book details happens exactly at the same time when another call tries to delete it? Now, would these things be the first things I explore? Probably not. But maybe down the line, they will rise up in their priority. Note that for these kind of tests, we need a different setup than we needed before. Also, with the previous calls, we just need a tool for calling APIs, just like Postman. But for the multiple operations in parallel, we'd need other tools. But since it's not the first priority, I'm not going to spend time right now about detailing which tool I'm going to use and when. I'm going to wait until I need it and then delve into the details. This is also true for deciding which of the charters goes into which sessions, which I'm going to combine into sessions, which I'm going to separate into different sessions. Only when I need to decide, I'll do that. One thing I didn't mention and didn't go into were side effects. So, for example, if when creating a book, the system should send an email to the manager. Now, you can decide where to actually explore these things, part of the individual functionality, or a sequence, or something else, or a completely different charter for that. If you feel that the charter is too broad, meaning that you're feeling it's not going to be just one session to explore it, break it down into smaller charters. And again, you don't have to do it right now. If you don't start working on it now, you can wait with the further planning for later. This is how you come up with a list of charters. You can stop now if you feel you've had enough for now, or you can continue and make up more charters to explore, depending how further you want to go. Once you have a list, you can prioritize this list and start exploring. And then, when you have some kind of findings, you go back, you revisit the charters and decide what to do next. If you have other areas you want to explore, add them to the list and reprioritize and go do that again. And you do that until you run out of charters or run out of time. And that was our example of how to create charters for API exploration. If you haven't tried exploring APIs before, I hope I gave you enough ideas to start. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and watch other videos on this channel. And in the comments, tell me which charters you usually start from and how far-fetched they get when you go down the line. Until next time, bye-bye.